welcome everybody to the Pottstown Historic Society. Wish we could see a few more people, but you know, we have a nice group here and we have the TV here, so this should work out nicely.
Quite a few told me they're looking forward to the TV version.
Yeah. Pardon our appearance out front there. Our sidewalk will be done soon. It's on the list. We had a sewer pipe break, so we had to dig down deep and put a new sewer line in. I have the flagstone. I got to fix that. I got to find somebody to fix that. But we're working on it. So pardon our appearance right now. It doesn't look real nice out front, but it will. Everybody knows that our website is up. I put this on the website, so I was hoping that would work out pretty good, because our website is pretty new. You can now be a member with a credit card on our website. So just so everybody knows, it's pottstownhistory.org is our website. We have room for a board member if anybody wants to serve on the board of directors here. We're also always look for volunteers on our second and fourth Sundays when we're open. We also would like to see a few volunteers for July 4th. We're going to have a table set up over at the park for the 4th of July, and anybody that can help at the table during the afternoon. It won't be in the morning. You can sleep in. It's in the afternoon. So anybody wants to, let me know. All right, I'll get to our speaker. I just wanted to know, how many people know that we had an Indian burial ground at the end of Franklin Street? Okay, quite a few. They dug up a chief, and as far as they know, about 15 other Indian remains there. So they know that it was a burial ground of some kind for the probably the Lenape, because they were the Indians that were in this area. So without further delay, I won't go into that. Maybe anybody wants to know, I will do it after Chief Bluejay does her presentation. I can let you know a little bit about the remains. They were found quite a while ago. So without further ado, I will introduce you to Chief Bluejay, who is going to tell us about the past, the present, and the future of the Lenape Indians, or people. I should say people. I watch too many Westerns, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's hard to, people still call me by my maiden name, because that's what they're used to, so some things habits are harder to break. So anytime I come into my homeland, I do a presentation or I meet anybody, I always have to introduce myself in I don't speak my dialect, and I will get into, I am speaking Lenape dialect, so I'm saying, hey, which is hello, Tamike, welcome, come in. Keko Hutch Delawancy, I'm asking what is your name? And then I respond, Delawancy Sakimiatias. Kulamasi Hutch. Kulamasi Himi Hutch. Nulamasi, I am well. And I also said, how are you feeling? Hey, Welly Kishku. Hi. It's a good day. It's a good day to be here in my homeland. So, I have to walk. I'm a walker. Let's see if I can do this, because that's when we tell stories. So I'm going to tell you the prophecy of the 4 crows. It was said, a fox will be set loose on the earth. It also said 4 crows will come. The first crow, he flew in harmony with the Creator. The second crow tried to clean the earth, and he became sick and he died. And the third crow said, I don't want to end up like my brother, so he hid. And the fourth crow said, you know what? I'm tired of hiding. I need to get back in my original intent with the Creator and fly in harmony again with all the 2-leggeds on this earth. And that's why I'm here today. The sad part is, we'll never get back to the first crow. Look around. It's only us. In the beginning, it was only us and nature. When you look around today, not so much. So the second crow is when the Europeans came over and they brought a lot of sickness, and many of us died, and there was a lot of massacres and interfighting, and that was the other way that death became upon us. And the other reason they didn't want us here, you know. And then the third crow we decided that, you know, we realized there wasn't room for both of us. And they forced us, many of us, to go out west, and ended up in 2 tribes in Oklahoma, 1 in Wisconsin, and eventually some made it up to Canada. But my family went into the forest and hid. And we also married into other white settlers' family, because if we married into them, we wouldn't look like an Indian. So people want to know who we are. Unfortunately, the state of Pennsylvania does not recognize indigenous people. So we operate as a nonprofit. We have certain criteria that you have to go through. We are not a social group. We have extended family. And even though you might see people with us, not everybody that you see with us is a member, but we have a treaty signers, and I'll get to that later, and we have volunteers. So just like you guys call out that you need volunteers to help us do certain things, we need volunteers. So you can go to the next slide. So, and this is more or less again about our story. This is our Chief Chuck and Uma Cinnamon. Chief is he's chief of ceremonies, and Uma Cinnamon. A lot of indigenous people have drug addictions and alcohol addiction, and that's what she works in. So, as the story went, we went into hiding. So when we couldn't go out in public because we were feared what would happen to us. In New Jersey, on Sundays, they killed Indians. Also, so we cut our hair. We started dressing like the colonists and things like that. We didn't speak our language out in public. And we did everything we can so we wouldn't look like an Indian, because our life was in danger. So, and with not being recognized, when you're not being recognized, we have to operate as a nonprofit. But like some of the things that we're dedicated, even though we are a tribe, we would like to bring awareness of our history. We want to join together with development of our culture, with the people in our homeland. And we want to educate partnerships among the people in our homeland. So a lot of people ask where we once lived. This is a picture of our homeland in green. So we lived in New York. You can see the area in northern and southern eastern Pennsylvania, all of New Jersey, and the upper part of Delaware. Also, the Delaware River, we call it the Lenape Seapit. We also call it the River of Human Beings, because our name's Lenape means original people. So it means the river of, you're saying river of the human beings. And also we were the first, our tribe was one of the first treaties that were ever signed, but you all know that story. All of our treaties have been broken. So a lot of people say, what's Turtle Island? It's North America. If you look at this slide here, you can see how North America looks like, you know. I mean, Turtle Island looks like on North America. You can see the 1 foot is Florida, the tail is Mexico, the other foot is Baja California, and I always get all the ones mixed up there. And Alaska's up there in the provinces in Canada. So we've been removed and dispersed from this area. Not all of us. That's what, some of us took refugees in other tribes, and even some of us married into the African American families, because believe it or not, they had more rights than we did. So if we looked black, you know, our chance of survival was even better too. So, and the sad thing is, what the government wanted to do to us, they didn't want us to get along with any other indigenous people, and they wanted us to fight among each other. So we want to be a strong union. So this is what I was talking about. So in our homeland, we are the only tribe which is not state or federally recognized. The one in Delaware is state recognized, and there's 2 in New Jersey that are state recognized. And here's the listing of the ones that are in Canada. There's 3 in Canada, 2 in Oklahoma, and 1 in Wisconsin. If you notice, everybody's name is a little different because they want it to be called what at that time when they gave themselves a name and when documents were signed, that's how their names came to be. So like this one here is Muncie is Wolf Clan, the people of the Stony. So so they are they're more northern, you know. Right, we're in Lenape territory here. I'm Unalactico, is the Turkey Clan, is people that live near the ocean. Unami means it's our word for what. Our Turtle Clan is one who walks. A turtle is one who walks upon our earth or mother. The Muncie Clan is wolf, means rounded, or tusit is rounded, rounded foot. Pull and hook is also a word for turkey, which is Unalactico. I don't know how to spell it in our language because that dialect is extinct. The Muncie dialect is not extinct also, but our one clan mother decided to use Anami dialect because there was the most resources in that dialect. So, and then there was the Treaty of Fort Pitt, which was in 1778, and that's when the one leader, and that's when this is where a lot of the problems came in. That's when the treaty said there was no Indians left behind, and that's why a lot of people say that we are fake Indians. And here's the sad part is, I cannot speak for the federally recognized tribes. They have their story, and they have their trauma that they went through. We have our story, what we went through. We don't know what each other went through because we were in 2 different parts of the United States, but we all went through some kind of trauma because we know we weren't wanted in our homelands. People don't realize any indigenous person, when they were in the war, we were volunteers. And the reason we volunteered because we wanted to protect our homeland. You have the Navajo code talkers. That was the only thing that for Pearl Harbor, they could not break that code. Because of their language, it saved us in some ways. You know what I mean? So we did what we thought was right to save our land. And we never saw this land as ownership. We were trying to keep it for the next generations yet to come. And this is where I think it's very, very hard, because I can't speak for the federally recognized tribe, but they were put on land that you couldn't grow crops and things like that. So every time something was done to them by the white settlers and by the government, everything was done the wrong way. They don't have any trust because every time they were promised something, it was broken, and it's very heart-wrenching for them. Even though we do see them. I never lived on the reservation. When you live on a reservation, it's a different way of life. And also, a lot of people don't understand. They won't look you in the face because that's the way they're taught. They're not supposed to look a woman. They're not supposed to look at a woman. They're supposed to look down because they think, I guess the word to say it's inappropriate. But you know what I mean? And so a lot of people, when they see them, they think they're being rude. They're not being rude. And that's where a lot of the misconceptions happen. Even when the white settlers came over, they didn't understand certain things. We spoke one language, they spoke other language, and that's where when people are afraid, that's when fear comes in, and that's when people are mean and they do whatever they can to protect their family. And that's why I think, because of the language corruption and things like that, that's why there was a lot of misunderstandings. I don't hold any of that, I guess. I try not to hold hatred in my heart, because you can't help what your ancestors did, but you can talk about it and you can learn from it. So William Penn he really tried to be our friend. And at that time, it was probably very difficult for him because when they saw us, when the white settlers came over, they came fully dressed up, up to their necks and we hardly had any clothes on, and they saw us picking berries and talking to the plants and talking to the animals, and they thought we were very unheathen-like. We weren't Christians, but we believed in the Creator, Kishwamokan, the one who created us. But it was all, we didn't understand each other. And, there was a lot of misfortune. But William Penn really tried to learn our language. He learned a watered-down version. And I always like the saying that he said, "What wrong is wrong, even if everyone is against it. I mean, right is right, even if everyone is against it. And wrong is wrong if everyone's for it." And that's that's what you have to try to stand up. But we stood up so many times and we just kept on getting knocked down. Next slide. So our word for William Penn was Mekong because he always had it means quill, and he always had like a quill in his hat. The Iroquois called him Brother Onus. So, and then I always forget this. So he even, when we wrote the treaties and things they always said, "We will live in love with William Penn and his children while the sun, the moon, and the star will endure with Chief Tanneman." But the sun and stars are still here, but the treaties aren't. So if you want to read some interesting facts about William Penn, these are two really good books. I have this one, and it's very hard for me to read because the way they talked back then, it took me like 3 or 4 times to read a book to understand it because they talk a little funny back then, but it's really good information. But that one's really hard to find. I did see that there was a book from Paul Wallace up on the table out there. Next slide. So our culture center is in Easton. We have 2 Facebook pages. We have our nation's website. All these projects are Fourth Crow because we're in the present being Fourth Crow, trying not to be afraid who we are. So in 2008, we worked. A lady Abigail from Penn Museum collaborated with Chief Bob and Shelley DePaul, and we had a little exhibit, Filling the Prophecy. And when they had the exhibit, it was only supposed to last 6 months, but it ended lasting almost 2 years. And it was in the Penn Museum, but afterwards, now they returned all our heirlooms and artifacts and things like that, but now all the beautiful displays that they did, usually when they're done with it, they put it in a box at the bottom of in the basement. They let us have it, and now it's hanging in our walls at our culture center. And our culture center, we try to be open, but it depends how many volunteers you get on a Saturday. So we try to be open the second Saturday. We were open today. We're not open until June again, but I always post on the Facebook page when we're open. So this is, so right here is my grandfather's rattle made out of a turtle shell, and that is displayed in our culture center. And there was some treaty signed there, and I have to get in the practice of remembering, but there were some treaties that were signed there, and actually because we are in the Buckman Public House on the corner of 2nd and Northampton Street in Easton. And it's great to be next to the river where the Lehigh and the Delaware River meet. Now, a lot of this information I don't know by heart because I was explaining it earlier. My grandfather grew up in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Then he moved. He got married, and then he moved the family to Pennsylvania. And then my mom and dad found each other, and here I am. And so the stuff that I know, it's what my grandfather told me, but I didn't write any of that stuff down. A lot of stuff I don't remember. So when I try to give a talk in an area, I try to do a little bit of research. So I found that, like, in 1756, there was Indian tax occurring out this way in Montgomery County near Skipback, at the meeting house. And then 1763, they found the Quakers sponsored a project to collect money for the Indians that and things like that. So a lot of things happened in Skipback and in that time period. There was accounts of Indians working with earlier people before. They traveled back and forth and into their homeland. But a lot of these stories, right here it says, the stories that tell how the Indian was paid a farmer to carry his grain by the sack. So there were different things that we did to barter and to trade to get different things. So this was happening in Montgomery County. The information that I get, I try to get it from the historical side. I did not live in Montgomery County, and I don't know any of our members that did. So we have to rely on the information that's documented, because that's one thing nice about the historical societies, because people document stuff and they share their stuff. Next slide. So there's another story of an Indian sitting on a log at Skipback Creek when a settler joined him on the log, and they continued moving closer and closer. The end log is kind of what a white man was doing with the Indian, and more or less it's trying to, as they squeeze us off our homeland. They said there was Indians buried in this area. It is a forgotten cemetery off of Perkiomen Creek Road near Rainbow Ridge Circle. Like I said, I don't know. It is also known as Pauling Schneck Cemetery. Like I don't know this, but it's just some information I have. So, like I just found out today that there was a Indian burial ground here. And a lot of times what happened was, what they did, they just removed the tombstones and they left the graves there. Also, a lot of times, a lot of things weren't documented because they didn't see us as people, or we weren't counted to have a tombstone. So sometimes they would just write Indian woman, or there wouldn't be no grave marker. So there could be people buried here, but the way they did it back then was not the right way. So, next. Yeah, so many thousand, there was a lot of artifacts found in Skipback. A lot of people have artifacts, and here's the thing, a lot of people find them when it rains, after a good hard rain. If you go to a stream, you'll find our arrowheads. After a farmer tilled their fields, you'll find our arrowhead. And we're very fortunate. Many people give them back to us. But if you don't want to give them back to us, then give them to a historical society that can display them, and reach out to one of the nations and say, hey, what can we learn from these artifacts? Can you tell us? Because we collaborate with people to help curate exhibits in their own places. So you can, if you find something, you have it displayed, but share it with the people in your community, because your community needs to know who was here first, and then you find out how your community became what it is today. So I may say, because I did not learn the language when I was a little girl, and since there was trauma, it's very hard for me to speak the language, and also I'm very lousy at phonetics. But they were saying Towa Messine, in that township, there claims to be an Indian man. So there is different things that has been passed down. There was, in the spring of 1728, There was a march to Philadelphia requesting the settlement, and then they had a court record, and then they petitioned different things, and at the end, you know, it was laid out because of a drought and things like that. Like that's how a lot of our lands were reclaimed by the white settlers. You know, it was originally ours, and then because of different things, but that's just the way things change. So the next slide. So there was a petition about this the folklore and the fact about the petition that happened at this time in 1728. You know, so like I said, I don't know this by heart because I just try to give people wherever they live in their county a little bit of information. So that's what they're saying. They're saying the settlement with the southwest section of the township on Troxler Road. I don't know how far that is from this area. Montgomery County is a big county. There were stone points and pottery shards that were all found evidence. See, they did a dig there. So if they do a dig, they can say, we lived all in this area, but we were nomadic. And if nothing's found, then you don't have the proof that we lived here. Because they want evidence, you know. But if it's so we're lucky that we can find this kind of information, and that's when the historical societies and the archaeologists find all this information, and then we have it. So I talked about what when we came out of hiding. So we decided in 2002 we have a Rise of Nation river trip, and we do it every 4 years. So ours will be next year. Our next one, and first it was called the Renewal of Brotherhood. Then we switched to the Treaty of Renewal of Friendship. So it's nothing legally binding, but it's a treaty of mind and spirit, and then it's a remembrance of Chief Tanneman and the spirit of William Penn. And anybody is welcome to join our river trip. And then along the river trip, we do many things. We talk. A lot of organizations and able to help us revitalize. We help do the education. They can sign the treaty. It's roughly a 3-week paddle. We can't do the whole river because nobody has that much vacation time. You're welcome to do 1 day. You're welcome to do 2 days, a couple of days. You can do the whole trip. We only ask you to do 3 things: sign the waiver, wear a life jacket, and listen to the safety patrol. If you can't do those 3 things, then it's not an activity that you should do. Yes.
What river?
The Delaware River, the Lenape Seapoo. And we start at the top of up in Hancock, New York, and then we travel all the way down to our ending location is Cape May, New Jersey. We don't do like I said, we kind of do the same route because we know where you can put in and take out the kayaks, and you can only use like a canoe or a kayak. And if you want to become a treaty signing, there's all these things listed. If you want to do one of them, if you want to do all of them, or you can just do a couple of them. But anyone that you want to do to become a treaty signer, that we would be greatly appreciated. So, and all this information is on our website. So a lot of people ask, what do we do when we're on the river? We camp overnight. Some people don't want to camp overnight, so they get a hotel. We drum and sing our native songs all up and down the river. We have speakers, like somebody from your place could, organization could come and give a talk, and we play. This is a childhood game. This is actually called jackstraws, which is technically what the United States children call it, pickup sticks. We play. We have potluck dinners. There's, like I said, there's educational programs and there's presentations from us and from other people. So people always ask me, what does the river trip mean to me? Well, we're actually on these boats. So I thought, well, we're on ships. So ships pass through seas and rivers and creeks and streams. So I thought, how many ships are really on the river? Well, I'm a chief, so there's chieftainship. Then you might bring your companion with you, and you make new companions. So there's companionship. It's a treaty of friendship. So there's friendship. There's people's relations there. So there's kinship. We sing. People bring their musical instrument. So you have musicalship. It's a partnership without being caretakers of this land. You're having you're building new relationship. There's always people that talk. There's speakerships. And to be 3 weeks on the river, you got to be a good sportsman. You know, you gotta have patience. You gotta endure not so nice weather. You gotta deal. It's in the summer, so it's hot and humid, and you're being a stewardship of the land, and also you're in a ship, so you're it's a waterman. You're in the water. You know, I remember one time. We were going to the dam over in New Hope. We don't do that anymore, and I made it through. I was quite impressed with myself. But the Boy Scouts didn't. So we all had to wait and play in the water till because they had canoes. So their canoes flipped over and got filled with water. So we had to wait for them because we don't proceed till everybody's counted for. And every day before we go, right here, you can see in this picture here, we have a prayer, we have a little pep talk, and they smudge all the boats every day. Because when we start something, we want to do everything with a clean mind, clean words, and a clean heart. So and that's how we start our day, and when we go into ceremony, and that's what we believe in. So our last treaty signing, we had 128 organizations, 367 individuals to be caretakers of the land, the river, and of each other. Most days we had between 35 and 65 boats on the river. So, and each day we came together to honor this sacred river. So, a lot of people said, what's the social justice experiences? A lot of people say you don't look like a Native American. Well, that's right, because I am mixed blood. My dad's side of the family came from Italy. My mom's side, on her father's side, that's where I get my lineages from. And my grandmother's side, I think they were German. A lot of people don't understand about the word redskin. And it's a very, very hurtful word. They actually skinned us. And they made us into moccasins or into shoes. So and people don't know that because they don't talk about it. They also, with the women, they cut out their reproduction order so we couldn't reproduce. So a lot of this stuff is not in the history books. You know, they don't want to talk about this kind of stuff. But this is the stuff that was done to us. And mascots. We don't want to be a mascot. I went to Neshaminy High School. The headdress on the Neshaminy, at the mascot they have, is a West Coast, or is a Plains Indian. We had turkey feathers. My grandfather had a deer's head with turkey feathers from it. So most people don't even have it right. I went to Gettysburg, and they were doing a tour, and they had a statue, and it was a Chief Tanneman statue, and I said, "Is that a teepee?" The guy goes, "Yeah, anybody can put a statue out." So we didn't even have teepees. We had longhouses. So a lot of people think you should ask, if you're going to talk about something, you should make sure you have your facts right. Somebody earlier here brought up the dream catcher. That is a Ojibwa. So a dream catcher, if it says made in China, it's not going to work. Because these people, these indigenous people, they pray. And everything's done with a prayer. When they make, later on, I think I have it on the slide, when they make jingle dresses, every cone on the jingle dress is done with a prayer. So if something says made from something else, it's not done the right way. Several of us in our nation don't have a problem if somebody makes something that we do. But please tell our story. Say, hey, please, like, we have Uma Turi, she's a beader. Uma Turi taught me how to bead. And she said to do this. Chief Bluejay told me when you smudge, you know, don't. This is what she told me from her, you know. Make sure you acknowledge those people. If you're going to take their story, make sure you honor those people. Because the bottom line is, if I don't tell my story, it's going to be forgotten. So I don't care if somebody indigenous does, I don't care somebody who's not indigenous tells the story, because they're keeping the story alive. But make sure you have the right source. There's many, and not everybody believes that way, because our one clan mother had a talk with the other indigenous person. He goes, I can't believe you're teaching non-indigenous people to do that. And she said, who's going to know my truth? He said, and she said, so you're a painter. Who's going to paint your paintings? She says, do your children do it? He said, no. So he says, why don't you teach them, but make sure they tell your story. And anybody here in this room today, it's mostly older people, but if there was children here, I would say, ask your grandparents why they make something on this day. Ask them why they wear that clothing, because those parts are parts about who you are. Be proud about who you are and share what you have. So also, there was cash bounties made on our people. Redskin scalps. Indians were killed for sports and things like that. So the blankets were infested with smallpox. So there's many things that people did. You know, so but it's not a lot of other stuff they don't want to talk about. We try not to. We talk about it, but we don't want to be frozen in that, because you want to. It's not good to hold hatred in your heart. You need to move forward, but you also need to tell your story. But make sure people don't punish the people that are here today. You know, but you hope they hear your story, and they don't repeat the things that these people did to us. So, these are all words of Clan Mother. And she lived in Oklahoma. She talks about physical genocide, kill the Indian to save the man. Children were taken from their homes and forced to attend boarding schools. They were prevented to speak their languages. There was a lot of things that were done. You know, the only good Indian is a dead Indian, things they used to say. You have to remember, two-leggeds are very, very mean. It happens in a lot of cultures. Look what the people, the Jewish community, they hid their people in attics to save their people. The African Americans, they built an underground railroad. My family, we hid. We blended in, and we went deeper into the forest. So we had a very good friend, Christopher Black, and he wanted to have healing of the walking purchase. And so we did a 6-day stop, and we did it by vehicle instead of by foot, because I would have been exhausted. So we started in Wrightstown? Newtown at the, and we ended up in Jim Thorpe. But, so it happened in September 12th on 2019. This is Christopher Black. He's from the Buckman Players out of Easton. They have people that represent, they do reenactment. So they reenactment the people. So he wanted to bring awareness about the treaty that they took our hunting ground. Just remember, we didn't see it as land ownership, but that's where we hunted. They took away our hunting land. And that's when we realized they didn't want us here. So, like I said, this is like, there's cedar in there, and there's tobacco, and there's sage, and that's when we cleanse ourselves. So every stop we went, we smudged the ground, and we said healing prayers. And there, we also had Shelley would read the letter in our language, and then the Buckman player would read it in the English language. You can turn. So this is kind of like, you can see, how the walk was purchased. And also, William Penn's son, they were very greedy. And his grandson, they actually, they lied. They said they were going to walk. They actually hired trained men. They ran, they clear cut the trees down. The one man was a trained athlete. But our clan mothers said, this was something, we need to do this. We need to heal the land. We need to heal our ancestors. Next slide. So this was the first stop in Wrightstown. Then David Rosen read the letter. Like I said, the land was smudged to ward away the negative energy. Next slide. So this is what I was talking about, the jingle dress. See, each of those cone, it's a healing dance. So each cone is said with a prayer. So most things that we do that are sacred are done with prayers. And when we pray, we don't ask for like a new car. We ask for good crops. We ask for things that sustained us. That's why when we have our ceremonies, things like that, we're asking for things that make us who we are. So she did the jingle dance, and to heal the land. And after that was done, we had a friendship circle in front of. We did a round dance, which was a friendship dance. Because everything we do, we try to do in a circle, because there's no beginning and there's no end. The creator's in the middle, and everybody is equal. Now this stop in Hellertown, unfortunately, the bakery got robbed the night before. So they went in and they smudged the place. And then, we did the same thing there again. So, next slide. So this is the slide. This is the stop that was heart-wrenching. The one man at the stop didn't think we were Indians. He thought we were actors. He says, there's no more Indians. And he was very disrespectful. The lady that was in charge of it realized, but some people don't think we exist. So, and then we said, no, we can park there. We're part of this. No, you're the reenactors. You can't park there. I'm like, no, we're not the reenactors. But whatever. So there was a lot of feelings, but the one elder woman said, remember, we are here to heal. We actually felt what our ancestors went through. We felt the pain, but we were here. So even though it wasn't a misfortune, what happened to us, we understood the way we were treated at that time. And then the fifth stop, even at the last stop, some people, they got angry and they left. And some of them we found them on this. And this is when I was driving, because we were driving up a hill, and I'm like, they had to walk this in the woods. I'm exhausted, and we're on the fifth stop, and I'm tired, and I'm in my air conditioned car. So next one. So this one I knew we did a good thing. The dragonfly. It's a sign of rebirth. When they called in the ancestors. When we called in the ancestors, the dragonflies flew in between. So I knew what we did, the healing journey, even though it brought many tears, I knew we did it in a good way. And even Chuck said, it was a lot harder to do this than I thought. When it was healing, it was sad, it was emotional, but it was a good day. So it was a good day, because we believe everything has a spirit. Whether it's a rock, a little drop of water, a tall mountain, the dragonfly spoke to us, and so we knew it was good. So, like I said earlier, we have ceremonies. When we have ceremonies for all these reasons listed here, what we're grateful for. But we have ceremonies for each season, because each season different things come on to us. So midwinter is between the two football games. That's really, so that's when and then we can get our midwinter ceremony in, because so it's right it's the week, usually the week before Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So, but this year there was there was a glitch in the system. We had to do it a couple weeks later. But midwinter, that's when we tell our story of creation, because originally we only told our stories in the wintertime, unless it was attached to a ceremony. Because if you were standing around in the summertime telling a story, you were looked bad upon, because there was much work to do. In the spring, you're planting, and then in the summer, you're gathering your crops, you're still taking care of them, and then the winter, and this fall, you're harvesting. So if you're too busy talking, they would say, "Yeah, Bluejay, stop talking, lazy, when there's work to be done." So we believe the Creator had creepy crawlers to nip at our feet. So when we technically, and I always forget to bring them with me, but I wasn't too worried. I didn't think the creepy crawlers were coming here. I thought, I figured you guys probably swept up before I got here, but we're supposed to sit on top of 6 skunks, because then if there was creepy crawlers in here go nip at my feet, the skunks would eat them and I would be safe. So we also have a green corn. That's in August. And this is when we make the corn hostile. I am a lousy corn hostile maker. Everybody has their skills. This is not one of my good skills. Next slide. We have a water ceremony in the summer. I'm glad we have it in the summer, because we actually go into the river. I don't want to be going into the river in the middle of winter. Me Sing, you probably heard about Me Sing. He's out in the forest. There's been many sightings about Me Sing. He was a masked being, the keeper, the guardian. He was the guardian of the forest. Letting people know him as Bigfoot. Me Sing and the Creator were having a discussion, and Me Sing thought his idea was better than the Creator, and the Creator says, "You know what? Ever who can move that mountain can get what they're thinking of." Well, next thing you know, Me Sing is going blah 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 blah. Smacks it. He turns around and smacks his face on the side of the mountain. His face is disfigured. He carves a mask out of our sacred cedar tree, and puts it on his face, and it's painted red and black. So the necklace here are made by our one Chief Stoney. His son painted this Mason painting. You can go to the next slide. So Me Sing was, it was opposite. So it means night and day, good or bad, male, female. So, and then we have our corn planting in May. We just did that. You plant your corn, above ground crops. I'm forgetting my moon cycle, because you go by the moon cycles. I forget them offhand. But so that's many things that we do, because we are grateful for whatever sustains. And every ceremony ends with a prayer. And also we always have a spirit plate. You take an item of your food and you put it on the plate, and then we put that plate in the forest, because we want the spirits to eat them, because they're spirits in the forest, because we want to make sure their soul, they're nourished and to take good care of us. I don't know how much time we have. No, it's 8:00 now. So I think I was only supposed to speak for 1 hour. Is that correct?
We're not going to stop.
Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't sure. I don't want some places. So I am not an expert on arrowheads. I always like to put this on because the men love to hear about arrowheads and things like that. So these, it's done by flint knapping, and you break them down. And I have arrowheads over here. I'm gonna hold on for 1 second. I want to show you this. If you look at this one, this is all one color. So these were probably found at one location. And like I said, different rocks are found on these in certain places, and I'm not an expert on where rocks are found and things like that. So you can tell what area, if it came from Pennsylvania, if it came from Ohio, and things like that, because only rocks are found in those areas. The kids were playing with this. Now, if you look at this one, they're all different, and these could probably be trade pieces, because when they shot their arrows, they could have picked them up. They would shot it, and they oh look, I found an arrowhead. They're not going to say, oh, that's not mine. So that's a lot of work. I'm gonna take it. So, but they're all different. These were not found in one location, and so you can so like I said, a lot of people gift us stuff, and this one was written on the back. So a lot of people, when they gift us stuff, give the arrowhead, they say where they write on the back of it where they're found, because we have hundreds of arrowheads in our culture center that we're grateful that people give us back to us. So, and you can see, you get there's two rocks, and you break them down. As they break them down, you can see how it's forming to become the arrowhead. So this was a gift. Somebody made this in her tribe, and their parents passed away, and I don't carry it around because it's considered a weapon. I can't take it to schools. But this is they made it. They used the sinew from the inside of the deer's leg. But this is a arrow that somebody made. So a lot of people. So I have to explain, before the young boys went hunting, they were taught to look the animal in the eye for the first time, because they have to realize the animal gave up its life. And when you go hunting, you're not to waste any part of the animal. So a lot of people. So I do a lot of programs for kids, and I show them the animal parts of the deer, and I always say, "What do you think these are?" And the one kid said, "Oh, it says it right there. It's buttons." You know what I mean? But they would drill the holes, and these were our buttons. They would just slice thin slices from the antler, and they would polish it and drill holes, and they would, tie it with, sometimes once they, you can tie it with your arm, but we always use sinew, but it can be tied with anything today. You can make a necklace out of the antler. You can also make, if you tie an antler to a stick, it could become a rake. That's just a picture of the inside of the antler, because sometimes I have a lot of the stuff up here. Next slide. And here's the thing about the sinew. A lot of people don't understand about the sinew. The ladies of the tribe, because it's been breaking down a little bit. So right here, the ladies of the tribe would actually chew on this. Yeah. Just remember, they had no stores. The slide would break it down, and eventually it would look like this. This is our thread. So, as you see in the picture, how it can, and this right here is a bone needle, and this one is from the inside of the deer's leg right here. It's down right here. So. Also, deer hoofs. What do you think you can use deer hoofs for? Anybody have any idea? Elmer's glue. You boil the deer hoofs with water, and it can be made into. Also, the other thing we used for glue was sap from a tree. So we also made rattles. And right up here, I can show you. We have all different kind of rattles here. Now, we cheat today. We're supposed to use all natural material, but if you listen to, look how nice that sounds. That either has BB built pellets in there or it's plastic seed. Like, if you get it's probably underneath, if you get a gourd rattle and you shake it, you barely hear it. So we kind of like, they also would put seeds from different plants out in the woods. And then you have this one too.
For children or for ceremonial?
Ceremony, but the kids can use them too. I don't have a slide for this, but this was our calendar. So if you look at the segments on here, there's 13 segments. There's 13 moon cycles. If you count these, there's 28. So there's 28 days in a moon cycle. And you ever hear once in a blue moon? Our calendar, there's one moon a month, but there's 13 moons in 1 year. So this is our calendar. And we also had a weather rock. So if it had snow on it, it snowed. If it had a leaf on it, it was windy. If it was dry, it was a sunny day. Different things. If it was wet, it rained. So we have our humor. So I always say this word wrong. Well, Archaeology Society, we married into the women's clan. Our women were highly reverend. We did not call we did not use the word prince or princess. So next slide. So we also did, we made pottery for cooking. Pots were made from clay. Also, we also would use, it was very ingenious. They used to actually bake the fish in clay, and then when they would bake it, actually would pull, when they broke it open, all the scales and stuff would come off. We have clan mothers. These are our clan mothers. Each of them represents different things. They have different things that they specialize in. We have Grandmom Harriet. We got Uma. Uma is our word for grandma. We got Uma Ann, Uma Cherry, Uma Cinnamon, and Uma Shelley. And they all have different things that they do that are important to the tribe. Also, since I am a chief, if they don't think I'm doing a good job, out I go. So, the woman's moon cycle is considered strong medicine. You cannot do ceremony on a woman's moon cycle. It's not it's not looked upon a bad thing. It's a strong medicine. So, corn planting is a woman's ceremony. The woman did all the woman did all the planting. My grandfather used to say the prayer. So, and you don't plant. You don't want to plant on your moon cycle, because it's you're messing with strong medicine. Next page. So our children remain with their mother or born into the mother's clan. The young children stayed with the men would. This is traditional. The young children would stay with the moms and the aunties and the grandmoms and the young boys would stay there until they were of the age to go hunting. And you could tell by, let me see. Let's see here. All the men here can still take care of themselves because I can tell by their hairstyle. So if their hair is not falling in their eyes, it's their way of saying, sometimes we did many things, but we didn't have to say it. We can tell by, so if you were older and the hair was in your eyes, you're saying, hey, I need help. All these men, apparently, they're self-sufficient. The young boys, if the hair was in their eyes, they weren't old enough to go hunt. Once they were able to hunt, their hair was pulled back or it was cut. And then one, and I learned, I don't know everything. So the one little boy said, "Hey, Chief Bluejay, how do they cut their hair?" I said, "I don't have any idea." So I called the one chief up. I said, "How did you guys cut your hair?" They would just get a shell and actually and make it sharp, and they would cut their hair. So I'm always learning because I don't know everything. And nobody knows everything about their culture. So I don't mind if somebody asks me a question. And if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up. No, just kidding. I always say I'll call the elder. So we have children's games. They have the dolls. They have the hoop sticks. Very simple. A stick, sinew, and they would just get like willow branches and bend them together and tie them in sinew. It would be a children's game. You can see how, actually I had a man make me a whole bunch of them. But they get brittle. And then you're supposed to soak them in the bathtub. I don't think, oh, I gotta soak them in the bathtub. So I have one here that's actually broken. So, and there was other games that they played. Next slide. And then this is all about late chiefs. So you can go to the next. So I don't know a lot about this. So, cause there was Isaac Sill, and I keep seeing two different spelling of his name. So he was a well-educated leader. He lived in Buckingham, and he had a son that was educated in Germantown. But I don't know, because this is way before my time. So when I have my downtime, I try to read up on different things. But it's so much stuff to learn. So some of the stuff I don't know, so I try to read. There's various books. We have books at our culture center that are binders are full of information. So when I go there, I try to read some information. But I don't know a lot about our late readers. I talk more about our culture, but I like to know more about our history. But it's finding the time. Next slide. There's this chief here, and I'm horrible for Taname. There's actually, the one thing neat about, they have these historical markers, and they're all over Pennsylvania. So sometimes what I do, I just, when I get bored, I Google historical markers, and I type in our name and see what comes up, and I found this one. So like, he was hired by the Pennsylvania officials. He carried messages to the native people and colonists. He also was a translator and a guide. He lived at the forks of the Delaware River in younger times. He also chose to accept the white settlers rather than to run from them. You know what I mean? So some people, that's why some people stayed. When he was in New Jersey, he helped fellow Indians settle in their own land claims. Then he met the one prime minister, rapporteur minister, and then they traveled together. Because of what they did, remember I told you in the beginning they thought we were ungodlike. So what they did, I think it was the Moravians, they converted our Bible into our language so they can teach us Christianity. So, and he encouraged the new faith, and he said to live among the white neighbors. So he thought it was better to stay here. So everybody's different. So T.D. Huskin, they also known as King of the Delaware. He influenced many other Indians in the Lehigh, Susquehanna, and Delaware River valleys. He was the son of Captain Harris. He was a broom maker, so, they're saying his name means as far as the wood's edge. And then this was the treaty in Easton that I think was signed at the Buckman House, because we have something big on our wall. So this marker is located in Wilkes-Barre, PA. So it's always good to look up historical markers, because they have the information about it. Next slide. There's other picture. This is somebody drew a drawing of him. So I think this is So this is what happened. We were retaliate, they were retaliate, and apparently he was murdered in his cabin in the woods because every now and then, like, you know, they were chasing us, we were chasing them, and then, you know, you're going back and forth with all these massacres. You hurt my family, I'm going to hurt your family. And that's the sad thing about humans. Since the beginning of time, we have fought over land. And this is a picture of, you can see all the ladies holding their corn husk dolls. This is what we always have our green corn ceremony last so many years in Cape May, New Jersey, because we wanted to be down by the ocean. So next, and this is just like I talked about a little bit before about just about indigenous people in the war. We had the most population in the war. 42,000 served in Vietnam. 90% of them were volunteers, regardless of their role. They always was present and ready to set duty calls. Many of them, what they did, they actually made drums out of the oil, the things they got the water. They would practice some of their information. Like they would still do ceremony and things like that with whatever they could find where they were at. Next slide. This is about the citizenship. Was acted on June 2nd, 1924. This picture is with one president with the Osage Indians after citing this. But even after that, this was 1924. As late as 1948, Arizona and New Mexico barred us from Native Americans from voting. Their right to vote, you know, even to 1957. People don't know that, realize, you know, a lot of things that we were not privileged to. And then that's just if you want to keep in touch with me, I forgot the P. So if you want to reach out to me, there's my email. I don't answer phone numbers I don't know. So make sure you leave a message, and then I will call you back. I have business cards up here. If you have any questions, things I didn't cover, it's very hard to put all our history in an hour. But Wanishi, I am grateful being in my homeland. I appreciate, and some people get upset, like not enough people show up, and we always say, "Ever who was meant to be here was meant to be here." And if only one of you take back something that you learned today, I am happy. You know, because it's baby steps, getting our word out and things like that. So I appreciate you taking your time on a Monday night to be here. But I have items up for sale. I also have some items you can come look at. And a lot of people, if you have any questions, you can ask me any questions.
We had a man here in Pottstown, Mr. Camaho. I do not know what tribe he belonged to, but he was just the neatest, pleasant man to talk to. And he loved my cookies.
Oh. Yeah, we do have a sweet tooth.
I went to school with his daughter for 12 years.
Patricia.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
You mentioned earlier how the phrase, "the only good Indian is a dead Indian," developed. And I taught history for 34 years. And it's interesting because when you look at something like that and you compare what the Native Americans went through, the Cherokee Trail of Tears, the Osage Indians, I mean, the government pushed them into Oklahoma, and then they discover oil on their land and become millionaire Indians, so the government takes it away again. But when you think of that phrase and compare it with the plight of the African American within our culture, the Native American, the indigenous people, have really had a much worse time when you consider the whole thing. I mean, at least in the 14th Amendment and 15th Amendment, the African Americans supposedly were given the right to vote. Obviously, depending upon where you live, they didn't have it, but at least it was on record, where you're not getting it until, you know, the 50s in
Right.
Arizona and New Mexico.
Right.
And many years ago, I drove across country and went down the southern route through Route 66, which went across the Navajo Reservation. And I mean, the plight of those people was absolutely pitiful.
Oh yeah, they put them on land that you can't grow crops on. You know what I mean? They wanted them to fail. They didn't, for what, they did not want any of us here. And it's very, very sad. And people don't, and we fight, like, we fight for our water. You know what I mean? And, I think, I don't know what happened, there was Irish slaves, okay? And we fed them or we did something, I don't remember the whole story. And then when Ireland, when we had that standoff about the water, it was a couple of years, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, they donated the South Dakota about was it the pipeline? So the Irish people remembered that. And they said, you know, when we were here, they did this, and they gave money back to this, to the pipeline. And they were on their land and they were doing all, that was, every time news came up, it took it off. I forgot to put on here, because I must have, I move all my slides around, but like indigenous people, women being murdered, because when they're a federally recognized tribe, and I don't have all my facts about, they're in their own sovereign union. So they have their laws, and then you have the United. So there's that gray area. Okay, so that lady, she was a young girl that lived in Florida, and her boyfriend killed her. Sarah something. It starts with her last name. Maybe starts with a P. They just did a big documentary on her, and somebody said to her father, she got saved because she was a white woman, and he was very offended by it. He did the research, and in the documentary, he talks about murdered indigenous women and children, how many are still missing, and he said he didn't know because they don't share that information.
Well, that was with the little, what is it, Little Moonflower, the book and movie that was out a couple years ago, Under the Moonflower Sun or whatever.
Yeah.
That was out in Oklahoma with the Osage, and the women and young girls were disappearing, and nobody worried about it.
And they still don't worry about it to this day. Yeah, there is organizations fighting for it. They come to our our powwow. Our powwow is the second weekend in June up in Jim Thorpe, and they have the little statue. You know, they have a little display about with a red hair handprint, but people don't realize. Like, I don't know if I want to be federally recognized in some ways. The part, I'd rather be state recognized because there's this gap.
Yeah.
And then, where will they put us in Pennsylvania? You know what I mean? They
Well,
got,
the interesting thing is too, because, I mean, we live in the East. If we've lived here all our lives and we've gone to school here, we don't have that much contact with indigenous people.
right,
Where if you lived out in the West, again, the only good Indian was a dead Indian.
right,
So where in the South, the blacks couldn't use bathrooms, couldn't use water fountains, but they were never told the only good one was a dead one.
right.
So growing up as a young Indian youth, I mean, how can you even think
Right, and a lot of,
you're going to have success in this life?
and that's why a lot of some of our elders, even though we're Fourth Crow, some of them will not talk about what they've been through. Some of our members were in boarding schools. They got yanked out. Some of them, the mothers refused to put them in boarding schools, and they they hid. They married into the German families and things like that. But some people really look out for us and they understand, but a lot of things is just so hidden and so buried, and they don't know. But thank you. And like I said, I don't know world history. I'm busy doing all these programs, and then I have to go home, and I'm like, what am I going to read next? You know what I mean? But it's nice to hear from other people or some people are more knowledgeable than me because they're a history teacher. They know different things and they study that stuff, but it's hard to know everything about your people.
Well,
And
it's interesting. I taught in Philadelphia, and for many of the years that I taught, I was the token integration in my classroom. And of course, teaching history, and I taught U.S. history, so it was interesting when you came to the problem of the West and the Cherokee Trail of Tears through Georgia and Louisiana and so on, how my kids had no concept of that whatsoever. And I always ran a very open classroom because I thought teaching history, you have to be willing to discuss things, answer questions, ask questions. And, we talked about how the young Indian youth must feel being told that and hearing that all the time, where again, they had no contact with that part of the country, that part of the history of our country even. So they had no idea that the Indians suffered many times more so than their own families and relatives.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it, like the story hasn't been told.
Yeah.
So, anybody else have, yes?
I had the pleasure of hearing you speak at Limerick when you were there, so I was glad to hear you speak again.
Oh,
And
thanks.
hear some different parts of the story. I never taught history, but history has been one of my passions throughout life. Listening to these tales of atrocities and things like that, the Europeans did nothing to your people that they didn't do in Europe. Nothing happened here that wasn't done to Europeans as well. You think of the Arabic invasion, the Mongol invasion, the Turkish invasions. As late as 1683, the Ottomans were hammering at the gates of Vienna. And St. Stephen's Cathedral would have become a mosque if they'd broken in.
Yeah, us two-legged's been fighting for a very long time.
Unfortunately, people
We have a Uma Shelley, we have a language book, and on Mondays and Wednesdays via Zoom, I learned the Unami dialect. But,
Cool.
so,
And an interesting word, I never heard that Indians call their grandmother Uma, is it U-M-A?
yes.
Because I'm German.
Yeah, but you have to remember, we married into the German family, so maybe some of our words,
That's why, because the Germans call their grandmother.
and we have some other words that are kind of sound German, so, but, so, I guess everybody, I answered everyone's questions. Thank you very much. It was an honor to be here. Oh, I'm sorry, you probably want to talk.
Oh, no, not that much. Thank you, Chief Bluejay, for that presentation. I hope it was very interesting to everybody and you learned something from tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Does anybody want to hear the story about our Indians? The burial ground. Does everybody know about that story? I could briefly tell you here. In 1859, our borough council decided they wanted to take a hill out. It was down on the end of Franklin Street. Well, when they leveled the hill, the workmen uncovered all these Indian graves. The first one they uncovered they think was a chief, because he was buried with so much stuff. He had a rifle that was primed and ready to shoot.
Oh my gosh.
As what they say. He had a tomahawk, he had his pouch, he had his beads, he had a lot of stuff. The other ones they found, I think altogether they found about 12 or 13 graves there, so I'm pretty sure it was a burial ground. But the other ones didn't have all that stuff that the one Indian had. So it's evident that he was a chief and they were not. You know, it's curious, back then, they didn't have DNA, so they couldn't really do much with it. They didn't know. But anyway, all this stuff went to the Pottstown Library at that time, which was in the Colt building up on High in Hanover. And who knows what happened to it after that.
Do you know if the graves were like, a lot of times we were buried, the graves would be facing, I think, the east?
They didn't mention in the
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
And then it was, I forget what year. I don't know if were you there when we did the circle? Down on the end, when we put this, we went down and, I guess, blessed the ground. We all got in a circle, and a Native American descendant came around and shook this.
He smudged.
He smudged us and the site. So that was interesting. We do have a picture of it somewhere, but I'm not sure where it's at. But that was very interesting. But anyway, I thought I'd share that with you because Pottstown did have their time too with digging up the graves down there. All right. Well, everybody enjoy the refreshments up there, and thank you for coming out.